Many people would claim that Frank Darabont has made the best Stephen King adaptations ever put onto film. But did you know that over a decade before making The Shawshank Redemption, it would be Stephen King himself who helped Frank Darabont become a filmmaker? Young Frank would use one of Stephen King's infamous dollar babies, where Stephen King would allow aspiring filmmakers to license one of his short stories for just $1. For Darabont, he would adapt Stephen King's short The Woman in the Room, which would actually be shortlisted for a nomination, greatly considered for an Academy Award for Best Live-Action Short Film in 1983. Despite not getting the nomination and not even really liking the short film, somehow Stephen King became a fan of Frank Darabont, and for $5,000 granted Darabont the rights to adapt another one of his short stories, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Of course, at this time, Frank Darabont wasn't quite ready to tackle something as massive as that story just yet, so he decided to make a name for himself, polishing up good scripts and making them great. Eventually getting around to making his first theatrical film, The Shawshank Redemption, which was followed by other masterpieces of the big and small screen. He's one of those talented fellas that you wish directed more films. But maybe Darabont's shorter directing resume is for a good reason. Maybe the Hollywood studio system was just not ready and could not tame such a wild beast of an artist. He's one of the last tough guy directors, dripping with beautiful toxic masculinity that allows his creative juices to flow, and doesn't really give a who he upsets in the process, as long as he makes a good picture. And boy howdy, the dude can make a good picture. In interviews, he reminds me of those angry outlaw filmmaking legends like Sam Peckinpah or John Ford. But his films are also able to capture the uplifting spirit of filmmakers like Spielberg and Capra. This cinematic warrior of film and TV is not afraid to shout and scream at anyone in the way of his vision. And unfortunately, maybe that attitude has hurt his career, but will his career rise up like The Walking Dead? Or has he broken free from the artless cages of the Hollywood system and found his real-life happy ending on a beach with Morgan Freeman in Zihuatanejo? Or is his happy ending gonna turn out more like the end of The Mist? So yeah, what the f*** happened to Frank Darabont? But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Frank Darabont, we must begin at the beginning, and the beginning began when he was born on his birthday, 1959, in a refugee camp in France. After his parents fled Hungary during the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, his family would settle in Los Angeles when he was 5 years old. After Frank Darabont had worked as a production assistant on such iconic films as Hell Night, The Seduction, and Trancers, and at this time he would make his $1 Stephen King baby short film, but he would also be writing spec screenplays, including one titled Black Cat Run, which he sold in 1986 but wasn't produced until 1999 as an HBO original film. By this time, Darabont had become a decently respected writer, and he would team up with Hell Night and The Seduction producer Chuck Russell to write a wonderful remake of The Blob, but sometimes writing a spec script isn't guaranteed money, and sometimes you need money. So Frank and Chuck took a gig writing A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. The film would be called a rebound for the franchise creatively, and would go on to be the third highest grossing Freddy flick. So that's something. That Nightmare on Elm Street 3 success allowed the duo to get their Blob remake greenlit, which would be released in 1988, and sadly become a box office bomb. But in recent years, people are actually realizing how brilliant of a blob this is. And even though The Blob bombed, Darabont was still considered a great punch-up guy. If your screenplay needed to be punched up, Frank would be hired to work on the screenplay for The Fly 2, as well as drafts of The Rocketeer, and he wrote a never-made sequel to Commando. 1990 would see Darabont step behind the camera for his first feature film with the made-for-TV horror Buried Alive that aired on the USA Network. The film received mixed reviews and was mostly forgotten about, but Frank Darabont would continue making a name for himself with a Writers Guild nomination for an episode of Tales from the Crypt. He also wrote several episodes of The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. In all that time, working on all of these different projects, there was still one Stephen King project that he wanted to make, that he needed to make, even though he almost didn't make it. Filmmaker Rob Reiner also had some success adapting a Stephen King story into a successful film with The Body, or as we know it, Stand By Me. So director Rob Reiner offered Frank Darabont $2.5 million for a chance to direct his own version of Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. This Reiner Redemption would have featured Tom Cruise as Andy and Harrison Ford as Red. Even though Darabont liked Reiner's idea for the film, he declined, saying that he didn't want to defer his dreams in exchange for money, and was afraid to die without ever having done anything that he actually set out to do. Yeah, that's right, the dude turned down $2.5 million to keep Rob Reiner's chunky fingers off of the Shawshank Redemption. Thank you, Frank. But Mr. Reiner, he didn't sulk. He actually helped mentor Frank Darabont on the film, and would help get Frank's Redemption actually made by producing it through Castle Rock Entertainment. The film would go into pre-production in January of 1993, and would eventually be released in September of 1994, where it was hailed by critics as one of the best prison-based films ever made, with a lot of praise thrown at Darabont's script and his direction. Yet, The Shawshank Redemption was not a runaway box office hit, as you may expect, given how popular the film has become nearly 30 years later. It pulled in around $73 million off a $25 million budget, but word of mouth was big, and Warner Brothers took a chance on creating hundreds of thousands of video cassette copies of the film for rental across the United States. This costly gamble paid off as the theatrical box office bomb The Shawshank Redemption became the biggest rental title of that year. By 1997, The Shawshank Redemption would begin airing constantly on the TNT channel, where the film would garner record-breaking numbers. And that's actually where I saw Shawshank Redemption for the first time, on TNT. And spoiler alert, but I don't know why you're watching this if you haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption, but young, stupid me actually thought the movie ended with him escaping from prison, so I turned it off right there, and still thought it was an amazing masterpiece, but it wasn't until years later when I watched the movie on DVD or something and found out that there was another ending. Zihuatanejo! Yep, The Shawshank Redemption received 7 Academy Award nominations, including a Best Screenplay Adaptation nomination for Darabont. The film has gone on to be hailed by many as the greatest movie ever made. And as we all know, The Shawshank Redemption is a drama based on a short story by Stephen King, who is known for writing horror stories. And it is this reason, I think, that the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films were confused when they nominated Shawshank Redemption for Best Screenplay at their annual Saturn Awards. But oh well. And do you know who Frank Darabont had to go up against that year? Himself! That's right, he was also nominated that year for co-writing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And yeah, think about this. Shawshank was this dude's first theatrical film to direct. His first movie was the greatest ever made, according to IMDb sometimes. Not feeling the need to rush into anything, Darabont would wait 5 years before stepping behind the camera as a director again. But in the meantime, he took gigs as a script doctor, working on such screenplays as The Fan, Eraser, and Saving Private Ryan. To keen-eyed viewers, you may have spotted Darabont as a ghost in The Shining miniseries in 1997. That cameo came about when Darabont visited the set of the miniseries to inform Stephen King that he had decided to write and direct an adaptation of Stephen King's other prison-based story, The Green Mile. And I think it's kind of funny that this guy, Darabont, he specifically specializes in Stephen King prison movies. Nobody else directs Stephen King prison movies better than Frank Darabont. It's such a specific niche genre, but he's the master, and it's a beautiful thing. And unlike The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile became a huge success at the box office. Theatrically, it would gross nearly $300 million worldwide off a $60 million budget, while garnering strong reviews that praised Darabont's filmmaking, which was due to how much he truly believes in the material he puts on the screen. Just as with Shawshank, awards would follow, with Darabont receiving several nominations from various awards groups, including 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Screenplay and Best Picture. During the making of The Green Mile, one of Darabont's oldest high school friends presented him with a script that he wrote titled The Bijou. Darabont absolutely loved the script, comparing it to old Frank Capra films, and Darabont agreed that he would work on the film directly after finishing up Green Mile. And Darabont is nothing if not a man of his word. And 2 years later, The Bijou hit theaters with a new name called The Majestic. And with Darabont's stock on the rise due to his massive success with these Stephen King adaptations, he was given a hefty $72 million budget for this romantic period piece drama that's not based on a Stephen King book and doesn't take place in a prison. The film The Majestic was given a prime Christmas 2001 release, but possibly because of the aftermath of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, audiences just didn't seem interested in heavy dramas in the theater. So The Majestic, it suffered, only recouping $37.5 million of that $72 million budget. At this time, nobody wanted to see Jim Carrey not being funny, while critics found the film to be overlong with forced sentimentality. Of course, if you want to know more about this movie, The Majestic, you should check out What the Fuck Happened to This Movie, and we have it already on YouTube. You can watch it. Frank Darabont is a man who takes time with his projects, so it would be another 6 years before he stepped behind the camera to direct another film. In the meantime, he would help produce the Michael Mann film Collateral, while also having cameos in his friends' films such as John Carpenter's Vampires and Peter Jackson's King Kong. And around this time, Frank also wrote up the first draft to what eventually became mutated into Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And apparently, Frank Darabont's Indiana Jones 4 screenplay was pretty dang decent, and Steven Spielberg loved it. But it was George Lucas who was not digging what Darabont was dropping. So they told Frank, thanks but no thanks, and hired a bunch of fucking CGI monkeys to rewrite it. In 2007, Frank Darabont would uncharacteristically work on 3 projects in a single year. First was producing and directing the pilot episode for the short-lived Jeff Goldblum starring NBC series Reigns, while also directing a single episode of one of the best shows ever, The Shield. The thing with Frank Darabont films is that they tend to stand the test of time. A lot of people even like The Majestic now, they just needed a few years to digest. But as much as The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile are hailed as masterpieces, his next and, to date, final Stephen King collaboration is also a masterpiece. But for slightly different reasons than his prison flicks. The film is, of course, The Mist, which has probably the most f***ed up ending of a movie in the history of movies. While the film may be considered just a, quote, creature feature, it is really so much more. It delves deep into the psyche of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, better than most other films that I can think of right now. And when that ending hits, it doesn't just hit because it's, shocking. It's truly heartbreaking because we have come to love these characters, and we were there, by their side, through this whole adventure, and just for it to end like that, it's like, I don't know, it was like we pulled the trigger. Which triggered me! And yeah, all that is in testament to Darabont's writing and Stephen King's trust in Darabont's adaptation abilities, because that ending was completely changed from the original novel. All that fucked up shit, that's all Darabont's fucked up shit. Even Stephen King couldn't think of something that fucked up. The Mist would receive mixed reviews that leaned mostly positive, but it seemed like many critics didn't judge the film on its own merits. Instead, they had to compare it to those other Stephen King Frank Darabont movies. And when you do that, yeah, The Green Mile and Shawshank, they're gonna be better, but The Mist, it's something different. It needs to be looked at with new eyes. New, gross, insect, monstrous eyes. Luckily, The Mist found a decent enough audience in theaters to give it a near $60 million box office gross off an $80 million budget. And of course, the film and its masterful ending eventually, years later, became highly respected amongst cinema snobby people. And you know what? It's actually much better in black and white. Frank Darabont was doing those black and white director's cuts before it was cool. Cause yeah, when it's in black and white, you really feel like you're in an old sci-fi B movie, and the CGI actually looks better. It's a nice little nightmare. But sadly, 2007's The Mist, as of this episode right now, is Frank Darabont's last theatrical movie. That was 2007, y'all. Do the math, that's a lot of numbers. Darabont has continued to do punch-ups on screenplays such as Law-Abiding Citizen and Godzilla, while also appearing as himself in 2 episodes of HBO's Entourage. And that is what the f*** happened to Frank Darabont. Oh wait, no it's not, he actually did something else, didn't he? That's right. In 2010, it would be Frank Darabont who would do all of the legwork to get the show The Walking Dead picked up by AMC. Darabont would shop around this zombie show to several networks before AMC picked it up, and would then write and direct the show's pilot episode. An episode that many still claim as one of, if not the best episode in the entire series, scoring Frank Darabont a Directors Guild nomination. He would also write 4 of the 6 episodes of the series' first season, which is like, its best season. The Walking Dead was a massive hit right out of the gate. And you would think the person largely responsible for that huge success would be rewarded. But nope. AMC decided to fire Mr. Frank Darabont as the showrunner because they wanted to create double the number of episodes with a smaller budget. Quantity over quality. And anyone who has watched The Walking Dead knows every season has like 2 really great episodes, and the rest are kind of absolutely boring filler content. Had Frank Darabont stuck around, I guarantee the quality of the show would not have dipped as far as it did. This is only my opinion, of course. The show still has its passionate fans who are wonderful and beautiful and great, but they're also basically zombies themselves now. Frank Darabont didn't take his firing lightly, however. He sued AMC for 280 million buckaroos, saying that he never received payment for developing the show, and was wrongfully terminated without warning, so that AMC wouldn't have to give him the pay raise agreed to for seasons 2 and 3 in his contract. With AMC accusing Darabont of never meeting with other directors to discuss the tone of the series, something that Darabont says he 100% did. He even sent some emails to people working on the show that, show the tone that he was going for. I'm going to read sections from many emails out of context now. Guys and gals, I'm in a state of absolutely boiling rage right now. Congratulations, you all accomplished what I thought was impossible. You turned me into a raging a-hole. Thanks a lot, you f***ers. Everybody, especially our directors, better wake the f*** up and pay attention, or I will start killing people and throwing bodies out the door. Fuck you all for giving me chest pains because of this staggering fucking incompetence, blindness to the important beats. I deserve better than a heart attack because people are too stupid to read a script and understand the words. You need to pay attention to the motherfucking script. I even chose my goddamn commas for a reason. Why am I working so fucking hard if you're shooting everything from some other fucking way that doesn't work? I promise I'm not being hyperbolic. And yeah, Frank may have been a little mean there, but the dude had a vision and they were fucking it up, I'm sorry. In 2021, the two parties, Darabont and AMC, finally settled the case out of court for a reported $200 million, with Darabont receiving future revenue sharing for The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. And even though he didn't exactly have the best experience working on the Walking Dead television show, that would not be the last time Darabont would work on TV. In 2013, he would bring the novel LA Noire to TNT with the new title of Mob City. Darabont would write and direct 4 of the show's 6 episodes. Unfortunately, Mob City was not a ratings juggernaut and was cancelled after just 1 season. And sadly, that is the last work Darabont has done to date. And that was 2013. Do the math. It's like almost a decade, right? Yeah, it's been almost a decade since we have last been treated to anything by this great filmmaker, this master of cinema. He was in the running to direct The Huntsman, but left the project due to creative differences. Darabont would appear on a podcast by filmmaker Mick Garris, where he said he felt beat down by the Hollywood machine. Of course, that doesn't mean he's gone forever. In 2021, he revealed that he had written a script centered around the American Civil War that was based on an unproduced screenplay by Stanley Kubrick. Of course, it has never materialized because apparently the cost to produce this massive Darabont-Kubrick Civil War epic thing is too great for any studio. Of course, with places like Apple and other streamers throwing out massive bucks for projects by big-name filmmakers, like Scorsese or Ridley Scott, maybe one of those streamers will be brave enough to give Frank Darabont a blank check to make his triumphant return to filmmaking. And to be frank, filmmaking, it needs Frank to be Frank. But you know what? I am absolutely sure that one day we will see the name Frank Darabont grace our screens again. Because it is obvious the passion to tell unique stories in the best way possible is still in him. And yes, even though he didn't exactly get his way to make The Walking Dead the way he wanted to, and the show certainly suffered because of that, he still got 200 million buckaroos out of the deal. So yeah, it's for that reason and so many more that nobody should give a f*** about what the f*** happened to Frank Darabont, because he's doing just fine.